Recently, I came across a crazy law in my home state of Utah, and it gave me the idea that I should look up some of the other crazy and strange laws that are out there. I realized that every state in the US has at least one just downright weird law that seems like a joke but actually isn't. Today I'll be sharing 10 crazy laws with you from 10 different states. What's up, guys? I'm excited you're here because I've been itching to share today's stories with you. My name's Derek, and I have a great lineup for you today, but before we get into the first story, I'd love for you to subscribe so you can join me for more unbelievable stories that are completely true. After you've done that, say okie dokie and we'll jump into the first story. Okie dokie? Alright, awesome. Story number 1 starts now. This law is a real eye-opener. If you're ever driving through Alabama, make sure you don't have a blindfold on. In the state of Alabama, you're prohibited from driving a vehicle with a blindfold on. Why you would ever try to do this is beyond me, but obviously something had to happen in order for this law to be passed. Just remember to keep your eyes on the road at all times, even if your Tesla has autopilot. In another law that has to do with driving, make sure you don't put your furry friend in the back of an open vehicle when driving in Alaska. There's one exception to this law, and it's stranger than the law itself. Your dog can ride in the back of an open vehicle only if its tail wags 46 inches or higher. Bizarre, right? I can't help but wonder how they came up with that specific number, but I'd be willing to bet it was after a lot of deliberation and a few cold ones. Moving on to Arizona, this law only applies to you if you have a donkey. Just know that if you let your donkey sleep in your bathtub, you're breaking the law. Here's the story behind how this law came to be. A rancher living in Arizona in the 1920s used to let his pet donkey sleep in the bathtub. Unfortunately, a local dam broke, which resulted in the rancher's home being flooded, and the donkey being swept several miles away in the bathtub. After the donkey was rescued, the law was passed prohibiting donkeys from sleeping in bathtubs. Here's the interesting thing. It's okay for a donkey to stand in a bathtub, they just can't fall asleep in it. I can't imagine that sleeping in a bathtub would be very comfortable anyway. In the state of Arkansas, be careful where you honk your car's horn. If there's a sandwich shop nearby and it's after 9 p.m., you're breaking the law and will likely be charged with disturbing the peace. Was an impatient sandwich customer to blame for this law? I don't know, but apparently most sandwich shops in the state are closed by 9 p.m. anyway. If you lose a pet bird, it's natural for you to whistle for it to try and get it back. Well, if you're in the city of Berkeley, you can only whistle for your lost canary after 7 a.m. Anytime before that, and you're not being a law-abiding citizen. I don't know what time canaries usually become lost, but I hope for the sake of the people living in Berkeley that it's not in the early morning hours. Sometimes, especially during the summer evenings, it's nice to sit outside on the porch and take everything in. Well, in Colorado, just make sure you're not sitting on a couch on your porch, because it's illegal to have a couch on your porch. The reason why? Because so many guys were getting kicked out of the house by their wives and ended up having to sleep on the porch. This resulted in entire neighborhoods with couches on the porch, and people started complaining about how much of an eyesore it was. Gotcha! Just kidding about that. The real reason why this law went into effect was because college students at the University of Colorado were busted for burning couches. I'd be willing to bet that since this law has been in effect, there's still been a few couch bonfires. Okay, now this one's really bizarre and involves a pickle. Most things involving pickles are probably pretty bizarre by nature, but this one isn't concerned with how a pickle looks or tastes, but rather if it bounces. If a pickle doesn't bounce in the state of Connecticut, it's deemed unfit for human consumption. The story behind this law goes back to the 1940s when 2 men were charged and arrested for selling pickles that weren't fit to be eaten. State officials came to the conclusion that a pickle is only legitimate and fit for human consumption if it's able to bounce. If you were ever hoping to start a business selling dog or cat hair, you wouldn't be able to in the state of Delaware. Were a lot of people doing this before this law went into place? And if so, what would someone use the hair for? I can't imagine dog or cat hair being a hot commodity, but maybe people were cashing in on all the pet hair left on their furniture. Maybe this is a case of one man's junk being another man's treasure. Sometimes we have to pay fees to park our vehicles, which we all hate. But the state of Florida takes it a bizarre step further. The state charges parking fees for animals, including for elephants and camels. I'd be doubtful many people in the Sunshine State own an elephant or camel, but hey, I guess you never know. Florida's had this law since the 1920s when the Ringling Brothers Circus moved its operations to Florida. I guess that explains the elephants and camels. And that brings us to the final law of this episode, which comes from the state of Georgia. There are many ways you can choose to reside in Georgia, but living on a boat for more than 30 days isn't one of them. Because of this law, many boaters view Georgia as a place that's not friendly for boating enthusiasts, and apparently a few years ago, boaters put enough pressure on the Georgia legislature to change the law to 90 days. So if your plan is to retire on a boat, you'll have to do it somewhere other than Georgia. That wraps up the laws for this episode. Let me know what law you thought was the craziest down in the comments. We've covered 10 crazy laws today, and there are 40 more to go, so every few weeks, I'll do another video like this until I've covered each state. To make sure you don't miss those videos and the other amazing stories I have lined up, make sure you subscribe. Also, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you have a story suggestion or a topic to pass along, drop it in the comments or send it to the email address in the description. Stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next one.